Ram Rajya is good as a spine, whereas Krishna Rajya would be necessary as the limbs and perhaps the chip of the brain also.
The last major war was 1971. I am digressing a little. That effectively ended Pakistan's conventional delusions. Operation Sindoor, in a way, has also checked, if not ended, checked certainly, I would say ended Pakistan's nuclear delusions. कृष्ण राज राम राज्य के युग के बाद का विस्तार है, विस्तृत युग है, और जिस युग में श्री कृष्ण थे उस युग और उस युग के धर्मानुकूल या धर्मानुरूप उस राज्य की व्यवस्था और परिकल्पना की.
Problem with the West is the Western religions were all born in a stroke of a ram's neck.
Jai Sri Ram. We can set aside political correctness, and at a time when working for Dharmic Renaissance was neither politically fashionable nor politically correct, during his political innings and after, Prafull ji has been doing a yeoman service in Hindu Renaissance, Dharmic Renaissance. I would urge the audience to certainly have a look at his book, very seminal book, Hindu Masjids, a very intriguing title, Hindu Masjids, meticulously having recorded most important temples that were the target of Islamic iconoclasm, vandalism, desecration, and more importantly, temples that were recycled deliberately to become masjids. After his political innings, Sri Goradia has taken to writing prolifically. As far as today's session is concerned, Dharmic Governance, two of his books, Krishna Rajya, already published by Bloomsbury, and the forthcoming one, Ram Rajya. Dharmic Governance. Why Dharmic Governance? Is it Dharma in governance? If not, why? If yes, how so?
You see, let us divide jungle versus civilization. What we are living in now and witnessing, in fact, while we talk, a jungle performance in West Asia, where for no rhyme or reason they are killing people. What's the idea? Who is going to gain out of this and who is not going to gain out of it? Yes, maybe bits of territory will go here to there and there to here. But actually, you just think about it. There is no purpose, no objective for this war. Yet, people are fighting it with enthusiasm. And many such wars, I mean, when you go into the Vietnam War, which some of you young people may not remember, but the older ones should, it was purposeless. And America fought both North Korea and South Korea, and God knows what all they did. But purposeless, absolutely. So, what I'm trying to say is, now look at our war, Sindoor, call it, or whatever you want to call it. But we had an objective, we finished it in a few days, and we returned to base, and that's it, finished. So that is object-based, purpose-based fighting, like punishing a child. But you don't kill the child, do you? But this is what these people are doing, is killing the child. So it's most unfortunate. And I think that is where, I'm sure most of you must have heard the name, Sir
Arnold Toynbee.
Sir Arnold Toynbee, no more, he died in the 60s. a great historian come historical philosopher or philosophical historian. He was in the University of London. He did say in one of his visits to India, and we used to invite him frequently. I think Nehru basically liked him. That what begins in the West, if it is to survive, must end in the East. Why did he say that? He was a perfect Englishman. He said it only because he could not get across to his own refused to understand that there is no purpose to life if there is no humanity, there is no morality. I mean, not that we are perfect human beings, but certainly we end our fights fairly briefly, quickly, instead of going on and on. You remember when this Sindoor thing was going on, the Sindoor war, so many of our opposition leaders said, and so many of our enemy friends, you can call them, or associates, said that, look, you are winning, why are you closing the thing? What is the idea? When you are winning, you don't stop a war. This is not a sense of proportion. This is not the right way. I mean, you have a purpose, finish it and go home. This is the difference between, basically, the difference between a dharmic approach and a adharmic approach, or what I would prefer to call a jungle approach. Frankly, that is what happens. And if you want examples of books, then of course fall into place the Ramayan. Ramayan is on my mind just now because we've just, between us, finished a Ram Rajya, which incidentally hasn't been written upon methodically. Ramayan, there is plenty of literature. Commentaries on Ramayan, plentiful. I think that would fill this room. But Ram Rajya has not been methodically done. Even Gandhiji tried, but he gave up. So we have just finished Ram Rajya. And let us hope that people read it and it's a success from the point of view of readership. Then that is the moral. In fact, you can say that Ramayan, not Ram Rajya, Ramayan is really the backbone, is the spine of our morality, Hindu ethic, Hindu, whatever you want to call it, is the spine. And you have, on the other hand, which is dearer to my heart in a way, because I wept for it for 15 years, to find somebody like Mr. Iyer to write Krishna Rajya. Nobody would come and partner me for Krishna Rajya, and I couldn't do it because I am not educated in the ancient Shastras. I advertised first in Hindustan Times, then again in Times of India, and then I resorted to All India Times of India, which cost quite a bit, I'm afraid. But people would ring up. Not many people, mind you. Just, I'm talking, when I say people, I mean 2 or 3. Saying, but then he was not a Raja, so how can Krishna Rajya be there? And
So, if I may interject, sir,
So,
Sri Ram versus Sri Krishna, the idealist versus the realist. What inspired you to take up Krishna Rajya? Ram Raj is still is a concept most of India knows as a concept, as an idea, which is dear to the heart. Not Krishna Rajya. What inspired you?
very
Krishna
simple.
Rajya.
Very simple, because I felt that Ram Rajya, or let us call it Ramayan, that is the true fact. Ramayan is a moral. It falls on the side of morality, in the side of ethics, and some doing the right thing. Ram avoided doing anything wrong. Krishna, you can't say the same thing. Why do you laugh? The point is to balance a moral thesis, an ethical thesis. You also need a realistic thesis. Otherwise, life would be funny. It would not be balanced. So, I was very keen on Krishna Rajya, I must tell you. And for 15 years, I waited to get a partner who would help me write. And eventually, we found, by accident, found Mr. Iyer. And then we wrote it. It was published by Bloomsbury, by, again, another accident. And it sold well. It is still selling in the USA, funnily enough, not in India so much. And but again, so nobody has followed it up by another publication on a similar subject. No. Well, it's too new, as I told you, Ram Rajya has not been written upon. So we are a little, I'm sorry to say to my dear speakers and writers here, that we are a lazy people also.
Sri Krishna or Sri Ram, as far as governance goes, whom would, especially in today's context, whom would you prefer or recommend? Both have their importance in governance, and you have stressed upon Dharmic governance.
You see, Ram Rajya is good as a spine, whereas Krishna Rajya would be necessary as the limbs, and perhaps the chip of the brain also.
Very important.
So, and I was thinking of doing something on the great man from Eastern India.
You're talking about Swami Vivekananda.
No. The man, the Chanakya. I'm thinking of Chanakya. But the problem there is that there is a publisher and an institute of management backing it, Chanakya. And as a result, probably it's a very crowded area. But I'm still thinking, because that will give a good balance also, help to give a balance to the issue of morality in life. So let us see. Any questions? I prefer questions rather than answers.
There are people wanting to know. Please.
Jai Shri Ram. My name is Ved Iqbal. I've founded a podcast called Vedida. And my question is regarding Dharmic governance with a particular example in mind. When we conducted Operation Sindoor, the Air Force that went in, there were 2 or 3 jets of ours that were downed. The reasons is that they were given the brief that even if the army bases of Pakistan are attacking you, you are not to retaliate to them. You are only to go and blast the madrasas that you have been designated and come back. But you are not allowed to retaliate. Here, in my mind, there is a conflict between Ram Rajya and Krishna Rajya. If the state-sponsored terrorism is acting as the limbs of the terror camps, then why are we trying to be politically correct and why not retaliate in the same way? Your answers for this, please.
The particular directive about not targeting Pakistani army bases has, in my view, less to do with politeness or political correctness and a long-term strategic view. The defined objective of Operation Sindoor was destruction of terror infrastructure, which we did. It would have been very easy for us to hit their military bases as well. Now, attacking a military base has a different political or a geopolitical message. It is not an issue of capability, but keeping in mind some long-term strategic and geopolitical objectives. I think in the interests of all of us, it would be best left there. It is not certainly political. I would say this falls more in the category of Krishna Rajya, and there would be bigger issues, nothing to do with capabilities. I would, for that, on the issue of whether we were politically correct or not, no. The last major war was 1971. I am digressing a little. That effectively ended Pakistan's conventional delusions. Operation Sindoor, in a way, has also checked, if not ended, checked certainly, I would say ended Pakistan's nuclear delusions. Targeting their military infrastructure is a different political decision. It has its own bearings, and we have thought it out. I am sure we have thought it out. So this would, in my view, fall in the category of a Krishna Rajya operational thinking.
Can I add one thing?
So I hope it may not be the most adequate answer, but I think it generally points in that direction.
I have inferenced from your answer, it was non-escalatory, and giving a little sacrifice for non-escalation was the.
We are a bigger nation, we have bigger objectives. So,
No, the basic point is that he is a much younger man. He expects to live long, so he expects this philosophy to develop further. Whereas I am in a hurry to finish this and complete the...
That is most generous of you, sir.
But my point was in retaliation to a target lock. Mine was not saying that to kill the military bases. Mine was that when the planes have been locked, you get to know, you get the alert.
Yes.
To retaliate to your target lock and hence give that response.
If I may offer not a counter argument, an extension of your own argument. Targeting and destroying terrorist bases is by extension, in the kind of neighborhood and we live in, the kind of neighbor we have, is also targeting a quasi-military target. So I think we should have faith in our infrastructure to decide the extent and level of operations. After all, Pakistan's terrorist infrastructure is also a quasi-military. So we have targeted.
Namaskar. My name is Rupesh Tiwari, and I am an author, and I have a slightly complicated question leading from here. We understood from Operation Sindoor that war and its narrative is also very important.
Yes.
If it is important, then why our historians are so possessive about the narrative which is already set in past, and they don't want that to be challenged?
A valid question, but if I may say so, Rupesh, that depends on what kind of historians we are referring to and whom we follow. And what do we mean by historians? Are you limiting yourself only to the eminent historians? Or are we prepared to become our own storytellers? The logical, not a counter, but the logical extension is that. Why do we have to depend on those historians? They are never going to be telling your story. So that is our work cut out for us. Historians who? इतिहासकार कौन है? अपनी कथा हम नहीं कहेंगे तो और कौन कहे? Donald Trump?
I actually wanted to, I came in a little bit late in the session, but what is the essential role and goal of the state in Dharmic governance in your research? How would you say is the central goal of the state?
Well, it's just to be fair, to be humane and not a jungly. कि भाई जीत रहे हैं तो मारो उसको काटो That is not the way human beings should behave. Otherwise, where do we draw a dividing line between an animal and even the animals have their rules. But we don't have our rules. Or different human beings have different rules. So I think rules are necessary and control.
But how's that different from the Western idea of the state, right? If you're talking about dharmic governance, what's different in dharmic governance than simple Westphalian state or the Western idea of the state?
Very simple. Europe has fought, according to records, about 895 wars in the recorded history. Now, can you imagine so many wars? They go on fighting. It is said about the great Frederick the Great of Prussia, that he never got off his horse. He just kept riding and fighting. So that is Europe. What did Napoleon do? What did he fight for? God knows. Even he probably didn't at the end of the session know what he had been fighting for. So that's basically the difference.
And if I may add, as an adjunct to your question, the role of the state particularly
You're ready to
is to uphold dharma in the Hindu context. I'm going to be very blunt, Indian Hindu context. In the West, as far as the Westphalian state is concerned, religion or any other construct exists for the furtherance of their state. Here the state has to exist for dharma, a very basic fundamental difference. The state also has to be strong. It can be nice, it can be cultured, civilized, but it has to be strong. That is a fundamental role of our state, has to be. So the gentleman there should not be deprived. He has been waiting very patiently.
नमस्कार, मैं अंजेश बरनवाल।
हाँ।
मेरा आपके डिस्कशन से ही एक प्रश्न था कि हम राम राज्य और कृष्ण राज्य को अलग क्यों कर रहे हैं, जैसा कि टाइटल भी है धार्मिक गवर्नेंस।
हाँ।
दोनों में राम ने भी बाली का वध किया, रावण का वध करने के लिए विभीषण को अपने में मिलाया, और इसी तरह के टैक्स जब कृष्ण ने भी अपनाए। हाँ। तो इन दोनों के राज्य में इथिक्स को अलग क्यों कर सकते? दोनों का उद्देश्य मेरे ख्याल से धर्म की विजय था। उसके लिए टैक्ट जो भी उसी प्रकार से सिंदूर, ऑपरेशन सिंदूर की भी बात करें या
निस्संदेह
जो भी करें।
उत्तर में मैं इतना ही कहना चाहूँगा, दोनों अलग नहीं है, न ही उन दोनों को अलग करके प्रस्तुत करने का कोई प्रयास है। कृष्ण राज राम राज्य के युग के बाद का विस्तार है, विस्तृत युग है, और जिस युग में श्री कृष्ण थे उस युग और उस युग के धर्मानुकूल या धर्मानुरूप उस राज्य की व्यवस्था और संघ परिकल्पना की गई।
बिल्कुल, मेरा भी यही कहना था। धर्म की विजय मुख्य उद्देश्य,
और धर्म के लिए बहुत कुछ करना पड़ता है, इससे आप सहमत होंगे। वाली का वध हो या कौरवों का नाश हो, धर्म के लिए बहुत कुछ करना पड़ता है। धर्म सर्वोच्च है, मैं मानता हूँ, धर्म सर्वोपरि है। धर्म का मार्ग सदा सरल नहीं है, और धर्म के मार्ग का अनुपालन हमेशा सुखकर नहीं होता। उन दोनों महानुभावों को बहुत कुछ करना पड़ा। बाकी फिर आप लोगों से अनुरोध है कि उन दोनों रचनाओं का पठन आप लोग भी करेंगे और भी प्रश्न खड़े हों।
It's just a clarification of what you said, sir.
Please.
You said in India the state has to be strong and is there to further Dharma.
Yes.
And the corollary was in the West that religion exists to support the Westphalian state. Can you elaborate that, the corollary?
Okay. Religion was the governing ideal or the governing force before the Westphalian state came into being. 1648 was the Treaty of Westphalia. However, religion had become quite destructive. We had the 100 Years' War, then the 30 Years' War, then endless war between European states. Even now, warring between European states hasn't discontinued, as is very obvious. Then when Europe learned that religion was self-destructive, they tailored it, they altered it. Nationalism became, religion was tamed to serve, but it was not entirely abolished. It was tamed to serve the needs of the state. Religion thereon has been used to further the European project, whether imperialism, colonialism, or the governance of their own people, in different shades and forms. Then came these various isms, communism, socialism, and various others. But every ism, every human idea, every construct, every ideology has been and still is meant to serve the interests of the Western state in various shades. In globalism, you can take globalism. It is being marketed as a very universal thing for the good of all, but we know it is not. Quite unlike Dharma in India. Dharma is universal, at least we hold it to be universal. The values of Dharma are held to be universal. The state is subservient to Dharma. The Raja is subservient to the Rishi. That has been our ideal, and that is why despotism has never been allowed to succeed in India.
The problem with the West is simple. The Western religions, or the Western religions were all born in a stroke of a ram's neck.
You mean with the slaughter of a ram?
God called Abraham to bring his son. He brought his son very faithfully, and God was so impressed. They said, no, let's not kill Isaac. Let us deal with this ram who is strolling about in the area. You see, this is, and then it was declared that there is only one God. And even if he did not clarify it so adequately, Prophet Moses, who was a brilliant man, said so. And he, in his 10 Commandments, makes all these points clear. Whereas Hindu rishis are still searching for God and wanting to find out whether there is a God or not, because there are sections in Hinduism and Jainism which haven't found God and are still saying, it's possibly there is no God. On the other hand, we have bhakti, pujaks, etc., but who haven't found God fully, in the sense that the search is on. And because the search is on, there is no final answer as to whether there is God or not, and how many gods are there. That is another question. So it's this is in other words, we are going from facts to a conclusion in the way Hindu approach has come. You call it logical, illogical, you call it what you like, but that's what it is. That is called
You have said inductive.
the inductive logic. The other was deductive logic, which just said, yes, I am telling you there is only one God. This is the problem, and that is how wars begin. Because Mr. Trump says, I am telling you, go to war. And they all went to war.
I think that is a very succinct and to the point explanation of things. Thank you, Anamika.